Okay, welcome to my talk. Thank you for bearing with me and thank you for allowing me to present at a distance. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry that I could not be in Istanbul today. I would have really liked to, but circumstances were what they were and I could not be. So, thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me, and hopefully I'll be there next year. Fingers crossed. Okay. On to the presentation. The iconic meeting of Kichwa communication and the Turkish tongue. This presentation follows some research I did not only for my MA on Turkish, but also some fieldwork I did over the last summer on Kichwa, a language of Ecuador. Okie doke. So what am I going to talk about? What is sound symbolism, otherwise known as iconicity? What did I do in that MA study? What were the results of that MA study? What did I do in Ecuador, documenting these ideophones? And the new avenues for research, where I may need your help. Sound symbolism and idiophone inventories. The foundation of modern linguistics, it was alleged that the sign and the signifier were arbitrary, right, in their relationship to each other. In our case, word meaning, right? Tree, I'm looking outside the window at a tree. Tree is tree just because it is, right? By convention. But a growing number of people were saying, no, hang on a minute here. Actually, there's a motivated reason for why some words sound like what they mean, right? Take the Japanese. Doki doki. Doki doki. This word means excited but nervous. The reason it means that is because of the reference it makes to the heartbeat, right? When you're really excited but nervous, your heart goes doki doki, doki, right? And so that is, as it were, translated into Japanese sounds, right? So the word sounds very Japanese, but there's a non-arbitrary relationship between the sound of doki doki and the heartbeat, and therefore the meaning of a state, a mental state, that an emotional state even, that you're in when your heart is going flutter, flutter in that way, right? Doki doki. Okay, so these words are called mimetics or ideophones. Mimetics because they mimic sounds, and ideophones, it was a term coined in by Africanists, and it's sort of the idea, right, and the sound in a sense, right, together. Okay, so it's alleged to be a non-arbitrary class of words. That's an empirical question. Are they non-arbitrary? We're going to test that in this presentation. And yeah, they arose out of many separate traditions of linguistic fieldwork in West Africa, Southeast Asia, Japanese fieldwork, introspection, etc., on their own language, in South America, which is also something I'll come back to. And lab work also started to look at these, but much later, including in this presentation. Okay, a parallel development related to sound symbolism is this effect I'm sure you've heard of called the Buba Kiki effect, right? So just to spell it out, you see these two shapes here, this one and this one, right? One sort of round, amoeboid, this one's rather jagged, almost like, say, broken glass. Which one is Kiki? Which one is Buba? Well, overall, in most of the world's languages, in many lab experiments, most people will tell you that the jagged one is Kiki and the round one is Buba. And you can already see I'm imitating this with my mouth, right? And Buba, right? That there's a non-arbitrary cross-modal correspondence between the shape and the sound. Okay, so you can already see that this is a parallel and interesting tradition, right? Related to sound symbolism in linguistic fieldwork. So these pseudo words, actually originally maluma and tekete, were thought up by Köhler, a Gestalt psychologist, and he went to Tenerife for a nice holiday, but also to test this out. Later, these shapes were rebranded as Kiki and Buba by the Ramachandran and Hubbard experiment, which is where it gets most of its fame from today. Very interesting, fascinating, was the basis also for my MA work. But it's not very naturalistic, is it? We get these shapes and we give them names and then we just test this run a battery of tests with people across the world. Okay, it's interesting if you do it cross-culturally, but, you know, these aren't real words. That's where the ideophones come in, right? This parallel tradition. These are real words that have evolved in the language. Let's put them together. Let's do lab work a la Kiki Buba, but with naturalistic words, with ideophones. Okay, so that's what I did. And I did it with Turkish. You'll love it, right? You'll be very happy to know. And that's what I did. I did it with Turkish. So I got 50 Turkish ideophones, pre-tested them, got the top 20 that everyone could agree on, gave these to 128 native English-speaking participants, some were bi or multilingual, and I made a Qualtrics study for them to look at, gave them an audio file, an ideophone, you can see it here. I can't play it in this presentation, but if I played it, then it would just go like bar bar, jar jar, something like this, right? And it would play once, one audio file. Participants would hear it, and they would have to then choose amongst these different choices. So I gave them 4 options in no fixed order, the correct meaning, then I invented an opposite of that correct meaning of the ideophone. I then made a foil, so a completely semantically unrelated ideophone meaning, and then I gave them the opposite of that foil. Again, so 1 ideophone, 4 potential meanings. What's it going to be? My results were as follows. So you can actually see that in red here, quite a lot of these ideophones were guessed well above chance. Now, this is a very crude graph, but actually, statistically, this was also borne out, right? And there was a significant effect. But you can see that there's actually a lot of noise in the data too, right? So it's not a black and white scenario here either. So overall, guessable, the correct meaning, but a lot of competition from other meanings. Okay, how do we interpret this? So guessable items, but the ones that were guessable, I can actually go back if you want for a second. So, okay, so look at this. Banger, banger, zonk, zonk, pat, pat, jizzer, jizzer. These all have cognates in English. Now, whether these cognates are genetic, right, as in they're related, unlikely, is unclear, but it's unlikely. Whereas, okay, maybe they share an iconic root, so maybe English actually has idiophone-like words too. A lot of people think that. But it's a bit more debated than the case of, say, Turkish or Japanese, which have these huge idiophone inventories, which are very codified, let's say, compared to English ones. But yeah, jizzer, jizzer sounds a bit like sizzle, sizzle. Pat, pat sounds like patting something. Zonk, zonk, well, in English, so okay, so zonk, zonk, like a throbbing headache, right, in that sense of the word. We have being zonked out in English, where you're like, oh, whoa, you know, kind of what's going on? Maybe you just woke up from a nap that was too long and you're going, whoa, I have no sense of time anymore. You're zonked out, a bit daydreamy, etc. And banger, banger, this kind of loud, repetitive sound. Well, I mean, is that a million miles away from bang in English, right? Bang, bang, bang. Not really, right? So it's interesting. You can either say that because they're iconic, they're easily guessable, or because they're iconic, actually, languages are likely to form roots with the same words. It's unclear which one was being tapped into, but it's very tantalizing. Right, so I spell it out here. Bang, loud commotion, can also refer to music, right? Sounds like English bang, patting, zonk, jizzer. So they're guessable, but there were lots of competing definitions. It's noisy, again. There's some evidence that they're guessable. I would say overall, this is an argument for iconicity. But again, even my study is not as naturalistic as it could be. So to get more naturalistic, we need to go to the field. I would love to do field work in Turkey. Haven't gotten around to it yet. But last summer, I went to Ecuador to document some ideophones with Dr. Janice Knuckles in Ecuador. Okay, so I'm in Eastern Ecuador at this point, and I have access to a speaker, a lovely speaker named Belgica, and she is wonderful at recounting stories in her native language, the Kichwa language of Eastern Ecuador. the lowland variety thereof in the rainforest. So when we're documenting these narratives, we're videoing them, so we get everything, right? Her gesture, her rhythm, you know, her all the audio features, all the visual features, basically, right? It's a multimodal experience. And if we hear what sounds like an idiophone, or a moment where she's really depicting some kind of sensory image, right? Going back to the original definition, boom, edit it, make it into a file like this. Okay, that's a shame. It's not letting me play. I will share the slides and you can play the videos yourself and have a listen. So turus is roughly what she was saying. And this is the sound, movement, and feeling of eating something crisp, sound of movement, feeling of crackling, cracking knuckles, finger joints, the sound of a mythic person turning into a tree as well, interestingly, it has a crackle sound. So you can see that these are actually not so different in some ways from the Turkish ones. Come back to that later. Same thing, can't play the video, but we have a transcription for this one provided by Dr. Janice Knuckles, luckily. So all of a sudden I fell asleep, tau, you know, and this tau is the sound of falling asleep. So it's also an iconic representation of falling asleep. So Janice Knuckles and I have collected a lot of these. Janice Knuckles has been collecting these for her whole career. I've just collected a few, but making up a corpus, I contributed to her corpus, and this can now be used, right, in experiments by people, including by me. I would love to use these in an experiment, such as in these future avenues of research. What we need to really find out about how iconicity works in the human mind and across cultures is just that, cross-cultural research, giving speakers of languages with idiophones each other's idiophones, right? So they should be motivated, not just cross-culturally in an auditory sense and in a confined experiment, right? Okay, I give English speakers Turkish idiophones, they should be able to guess them. No, they should be very guessable, even more so maybe across speakers who themselves have other idiophones, because they might be related, right? As evidenced by my work, even showing that English with its idiophones or pseudo-idiophones or whatever you want to call, like sizzle, sizzle, bang, bang, that these may have allowed English speakers to guess the Turkish ones. Well, imagine if Kichwa speakers have also semantically related idiophones, the same as, say, Turkish speakers, and they might be able to guess each other's more effectively. This could be really interesting. So can idiophone inventories aid interlinguistic iconic transfer? And this could tell us a lot about cultural evolution and how iconicity even evolves, systematicity evolves, right, in its opposite, and how these two interact in creating meaning across time and space in the human species. And this would really give us an insight into how cultural evolution works with these kind of nudge effects of iconicity. Continuing the cross-cultural theme, Ladino, the Jewish Spanish spoken in, amongst other places, Istanbul, I would really like to further document this language, which is sadly very rare these days, but has a growing resurgence, right, and revitalization movements, which I'm really thrilled to see. Can Ladino speakers understand other idiophones from other languages better because they speak Turkish as a second or first language? And what is the influence of an iconic system from, say, Turkish idiophones on a basically more or less Spanish substrate of Ladino? We don't know, but let's find out. If you have any contacts, I'm very happy to hear about them. Let's work together. For more information, you can go to the Quechua Real Words site set up by Dr. Janice Knuckles, where I have put up some of these videos. You can go to my YouTube channel to also see some of the recordings for this corpus, as well as some other recordings I've made, as well as interviews on the topics I've talked about. You can have a look at my MA thesis, and you can also watch these videos at previous conferences, or to also get a better idea of what I did in my MA. And also please read these selected references and others. And yeah, let's be in touch. I thank you. Thank you, teşekkürler, and pagarachu, Kichwa. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. It's been a whirlwind, but I wanted to leave you with some ideas to think about, a summary of what I've done in the past, and give some future avenues for research.